So through those years, I was essentially battling through this feeling of depression and this sort of feeling of being lost and unsure what to do, overthinking things, and not actually taking action and getting any feedback on my situation. And so the key to getting through that and the cure to that was right in front of me, but I didn't have the perspective at the time to see it. It was literally right there, but I didn't understand. I didn't have the perspective to see it at the time. And so what I was missing was applying the principle of progressive overload. And this society really is not really centered around that right now. If you look around, you notice so many people are fine staying comfortable where they are. They don't want to go out of their comfort zone. It's too scary. And what that does is it creates a situation where you aren't putting yourself in a position to grow. And so you're stuck in this comfort zone. You're stuck in this feeling of fear and you can't move forward and you can't progress. So when I say progressive overload, for those of you who don't go to the gym or you're not like as active in the gym, most of you guys who go to the gym, you will know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who don't, is essentially you're putting stress onto your body in a way that your body adapts to it. So when you first start going to the gym, you might be overweight or you might be really skinny or somewhere in the middle, but you don't have like really the muscle that you want to have. You don't have the frame you want to have. And so you're not as healthy as you want to be. And so when you start lifting, you put on muscle. Your body builds muscle to deal with the weight and the stress that's on your body. And there comes a point where you plateau and you just stop because you're not adding on more weight. You're not adding on more stress. You've now built yourself up. Like, so you were here before, right? But now you built yourself up to here. You're at this new level, but you need to keep going. You need to get to here and you get to here, but you can't do that if you aren't adding on more weight, if you're not adding on more progressive overload, which of course it could be weights, it could be more reps or better form, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the idea is you're continuously adding on a little bit more stress so that you can push your limits and grow and essentially reach your potential. So the first time I really started feeling this was when I was in the gym back in, I think it was maybe 2019. For I'd say a couple months out of 2019, I was really getting into the gym and I was really getting into this feeling of progression, really getting into this feeling of like I was making progress and moving forward in life, which I never really experienced to that extent. I had made progress, but it was just kind of like basic stuff or like my hobbies. I was making progress in my hobbies, but this was like my health. So it was pretty serious. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And that was right before the pandemic hit. And so once the pandemic hit, everything was going crazy. People were like freaking out. The stores were shutting down. I'm sure you guys remember how that was. It was insane. And the gym shut down. And so when the gym shut down, but they reopened a little bit later, they had all these requirements of wearing masks and all this shit. And I was like, I'm just not going to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. But the mistake I made and the thing that I did wrong was I didn't continue to apply that progressive overload. I basically just gave up on like my health altogether, essentially, is really what I did. If I'm being honest about this, that's essentially what happened. I gave up almost entirely on taking care of myself in the sense of routine exercise, routine lifting. And I wasn't like I could have done it in another way, maybe gone outside and try to do it or do like workouts from home, but I didn't. I gave up. And so when I gave up and I essentially quit, what happened was in my mind, I gave up on the idea of continuous growth, on continuous leveling up, on continuous progressive overload in building just my life in general, not even just like the body. I'm just talking about life in general. So this is why for the years after I started in 2019 and I wasn't lifting at all, I was really dealing with this feeling of unsure of what to do and being lost and all this because I wasn't applying that principle. I wasn't really applying it. I was applying it in the sense of like, going out there, like making money, paying your bills, but that's more just maintenance. That's not really growth. You're not really thriving. You're just maintaining what you already have. And I wasn't applying it in terms of health and wealth, my relationships or anything really. It was kind of just a time of maintenance and being stagnant, which was really a feeling of being lost and overthinking things and trying to figure things out. The good thing was I was spending time learning. And so in that sense, I was kind of applying the principle a little bit, but a lot of times when you're just thinking and you're learning and you're spending time, just sitting around and like thinking, you just get into overthinking mode. So a lot of times when you're spending all that time learning and thinking, you're just getting into this overthinking mode where you don't take any action, you don't fucking try anything. You're just sitting there, like you're just like sitting there. Oh, what should I do? Should I do that? But if I go down this route, this is going to happen. And so you're not getting any feedback. You need feedback from the real world to actually know what to do, or if you like something, or if you don't like something. Now, that was a crazy time. Everything was so uncertain, and people weren't sure what was going to happen. So I can kind of give myself a little bit of slack, but at the same time, no matter what your situation is, no matter what circumstances you're in, you can still apply the principle of progressive overload. And you can apply it basically in every area of your life. It isn't just for the gym. It's not just for building your body. It's also for building your mind. It's for building your wealth. It's for building your spiritual and philosophical understanding of the world and of yourself. If you think about our ancestors, we spent so much time in a state of being uncomfortable, right? Like, just think about like 1,000 years ago, people did not have warm showers. They did not have food that they could just go get at the grocery store. They had to worry about weather, being exposed to the elements. They had to worry about potential threats from other tribes or other countries moving into their area, maybe like bandits. They had to worry about animals attacking their farm, right? So they're constantly under this, they're constantly challenged, right? They were always challenged. They were always challenged by something. And today, we really have it so comfortable that I think it's causing a level of depression amongst people, because when everything is so taken care of and so perfect, it's like, what else do you do? There's nothing to really do. And so you're not constantly being challenged. Everything's taken care of for you. You don't have to worry about people invading you. You don't have to worry about, getting food every day. You just go down to the grocery store and get some. It's like you don't even have to farm for your food or find your own food. You don't worry about water or hygiene or having a place to sleep or dealing with the elements. Really, it's so comfortable. It's so well taken care of that you have to, in order to get out of that state of just being at maintenance and being at just here, you have to push yourself to get up higher. So if you want to get out of a situation where, you're feeling uncertain or depressed, you have to apply that progressive overload principle that we learn and take from being in the gym. Because even though that's how your body works, that's how, if you think about everything, that's how everything works. By doing something that you're uncomfortable doing, it really will push you, and it will make it'll push you to the limit, and it will help you get to your highest potential. It'll help you grow as a human being so that you can level up and gain knowledge and gain wisdom and experience. So when we're not doing that, when we're not actively taking the time to do that, I think that's where we get into trouble, because our ancestors were constantly doing that. Like, when did they have a time where they were just sitting around on a computer and, they had heat and food and they didn't have to worry about all that? I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying I think that that's a big part of why people have such issues today, is because they're so comfortable and they're not challenged. There's no challenge. There's no real challenge. I mean, like, going and like having a minimum wage job and stuff like that, it sucks. Yeah, it really sucks. But if you think about the sort of scarcity that we used to be in versus now, I mean, there's almost always a safety net. There's almost always a safety net, where back then you didn't fucking get food. You didn't, your farm went, you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, you're potentially dead. And even though we live longer now, I heard this thing where they're saying how, yeah, we live longer now than we did back then, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we live more fulfilling lives. So we may have lived like less time back then, but the life that we did live was so intense, and it was so like engaged with challenges. So I think there's a level of that that's missing today, because everything is taken care of so much that people don't have that external challenge coming into them. The external challenge is really not there. You have to actually seek it. And the way that you can do this is by getting just outside of your comfort zone. So when you do this, you don't want to think about, okay, I'm going to go from like, making, $15 an hour to $100 an hour. Like, you're not thinking that way. The idea of progressive overload is that you add a little bit at a time, a little bit at the time. It's like, you don't go in the gym And when you're in the gym, you're on one plate, right? On the bench press. Let's say you're doing one plate on the bench press, and then you go and add another plate. It doesn't work that way. You slowly add up over time. You add maybe 5 pounds a week here, maybe 10 pounds a week if you're really like in your newbie gains phase. But it just doesn't work that way. You don't just make like this drastic jump. And so when you make a huge jump, if you go too high, if you're saying, I'm going to add on another plate next week, or I'm going to make $1 million this year when you've never even made, 100,000, or, I'm going to like, just all my relationships are going to be perfect. It's too high of a jump that you're going to get frustrated and you're going to give up. So you have to make sure that when you're thinking about applying progressive overload, when you think about applying progressive overload and you think about applying the idea of being just outside of your comfort zone, it needs to be just outside of your comfort zone, not way up here. Because if it's way up here, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to quit. That's like a well-known thing. Like it's got to be like, it's instead of like up here, this is like too much. If you're going up here, it's too much. You got to work your way up. So you're here, 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 and then you get up to there. So yeah, that was just like really an important thing, was understanding that you need to be in a continual state of progressive overload, and it needs to be all areas of your life, not just the gym, not just your money, not just your relationships. It needs to be across all spectrums, because if you focus only on one and you neglect all the rest, that causes problems. There's going to be ripple effects from that, right? You're going to be in a situation where you're now fucked. If you don't take care of your health, but you're rich, well, no one would want that. No one would trade for that. If there was some rich guy, but he couldn't even walk, he couldn't do anything in life, you wouldn't trade places with him. I certainly wouldn't. Like, I would rather have my health than be like rich and crippled. It makes no sense. So progressive overload on all areas, challenging yourself just outside of your comfort zone. And actually, when you're in that state where where it's like just too high for you, like just enough, it's actually a way that you can enter into what's called the flow state. And so the flow state is where you're so like dialed in, you're so focused, and you're so kind of in that perfect zone between like challenging, but not like way too hard and not too easy. So you're not bored, but you're not frustrated because it's so hard. You're right in that middle spot of the flow. That is where you actually see the best like results. Like you'll get the best results in anything that you're doing it with. So for example, if you're in the gym, right? And you're not trying to lift another plate, but you're trying to lift maybe another 5 or 10 pounds. That struggle right there, that in between, is enough to put you in a flow state where you're happy and satisfied that you're making progress, and it's not too hard that you're frustrated. So keeping yourself just outside of your comfort zone. Another example, I used to do martial arts as like a teenager. I would do martial arts. I was really into karate. But I gave that up because I don't know, I just stopped doing it. I didn't really like it anymore. I lost interest. But I started up doing martial arts again. And again, this is another scenario where I suck. Like I literally suck compared to everyone else there. And so that's an uncomfortable feeling, right? It's uncomfortable when you suck and everybody else is good. But by putting yourself in a situation like that, where you are forced, it's not too crazy. It's not like I'm going into the ring and fighting like a fucking MMA, right? Or like some like professional fighter, but I'm going into a class where I have to level up and I have to actually get out of my comfort zone and get into this position where I'm basically like the student, right? I'm like the new guy, I'm the noob. And so when you do that, eventually, you start getting better and better and better, and you start getting more and more confident. And that's just a thing that I try to constantly remind myself to do, because that's how you grow and that's how you evolve as a person and discover, new layers of your purpose and what you're even doing here. So really important principle to take into consideration if you guys want to be doing this. I think it's really beneficial, and it really helped me get out of the sort of rut that I was in at the time, was actually just taking action and applying this progressive overload into the areas of life that you really care about, and so like your health, your finances, relationships, things like that, really pushing yourself to get outside of the comfort zone and continue to grow, because that will give you whole new insight and perspective on who you are, what you want, and all that. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful to you. That's the message for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.